All right, folks, so there is one thing that we have not yet talked about that's on the assignment requirements document, and that is the fact that we have to write in third person. Now, what is writing in third person? Well, it means that you can't say I, me, we, us, let's, contraction let us, right? We can't use ourselves in our essay. Now, you might ask, okay, well, how in the world do we write this essay then? Okay, how do we write this essay if about things that we enjoy if we're not allowed to talk about ourselves? Well, you know what? Think about it like this. If you like something, you are not the only person in the world to like it, right? So you broaden the scope of what you're talking about, what your subject is, right? You are talking about yourself and your own experiences, but you're not saying, when I went to the store, my experience was this. You turn it back to, okay, well, what am I in this situation? Well, I'm a customer. So when a customer goes into a store, and then you go into your example, okay, instead of talking about yourself, you're talking about this sort of generic customer. Or if you're talking about how the internet divides us, and we're talking about Twitter, for example, and you say, okay, when I tweet something, no, we can't say I. All right, so when someone tweets, when a user tweets, then we're in business, okay? That's how you want to think about it. You want to think, okay, so this is me in this situation. What role do I play? And then you dig in further. So let's take a look at it in our sample essay. So come on, we're going to go for a ride. All right, so we're at the desk now. Let's get down to business. I have this printed example from our sample essay that just sort of talks about things in first person instead of in third. So you're going to come through my thought processes as I look at this and I make it into what the sample essay is. All right, so I've printed out something here. Let's take a look at it. One of my favorite things to do during the pandemic is to play Pokemon Go. Playing Pokemon Go gives me the chance to escape into another world entirely. AR games like Pokemon Go are my favorite for that reason. Gives me daily challenges, long-term goals, and a chance to play with my friends. All right, does this basically say the same thing that our introduction in our sample essay says? Absolutely. It does. It basically says the same thing, but it's way shorter, for one, and for two, I'm in there all the time. Check this out, me, my down here, me here, and my here, right? I'm in this constantly. But the thing is that in the sample, it's not there. So how do we get rid of that? Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is how to develop this so that it's clear for the reader, okay? Let's do adjustment to perspective first. So one of my favorite things to do during the pandemic is to play Pokemon Go. Is it only my favorite things, or is there a lot of other people who are, relying on this augmented reality to kind of escape this reality that we're in right now? Probably a lot of people. And you know what? Even if it's a small group, it doesn't matter. We just assume that it's a blanket, like everyone who plays this, okay? And so we would say, okay, well, instead of one of my favorite things, we could say something like, let's tweak this a little bit. We can get rid of that. And we could say, during the pandemic, a great way to pass the time is to play Pokemon Go, right? We just kind of scoot that right in there. All right, playing Pokemon Go gives me the chance to escape into another world entirely. This sentence is a lot easier because guess what? Instead of me, we would just say players because I am a player in that game. All right, let's move on to that next sentence. AR games like Pokemon Go are my favorite for that reason. Okay, cool. Let's take out my favorite. Many people rely on AR games like Pokemon Go for that reason. Ultimately, we're saying the same thing, we're just making it broader. It gives me daily challenges, long-term goals, and a chance to play with my friends. All right, so it gives me, we could even say it gives players, right? So we could say players. We could also say, instead of gives, we can kind of tweak this thing, get rid of me and say it offers, right? Because the game itself offers this. And a chance to play with my friends. Boom. Now we're done. Okay? It offers daily challenges, long-term goals, and a chance to play with friends. Sound good? Well, not yet, but we're getting there. We now want to look at this for clarity, right? During the pandemic. Which pandemic? So we know the COVID-19 pandemic. When we live through it, it makes it feel like everybody knows everything about it, but we still need to clarify. So the COVID-19 pandemic, we could call it the 2020 pandemic, if we remember how to spell dates. We need to develop that more because you know what? Yeah, pandemic sounds bad, but it doesn't really speak to this need for escape that we kind of talk about in that next line, right? So what about this pandemic makes it so that we need to be able to break free and kind of escape into this other world? Well, there's those ideas of isolation, right? Because, we have to stay separate from other people. And that's the big one here, right? This idea of escape from this kind of limiting world into a more broad, encompassing world where, sure, you can wear a mask in Pokemon Go, but do you need to to stay safe? No. Okay, so we could say something like, during the isolation of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, a great way to pass the time is to play Pokemon Go. Playing Pokemon Go gives players the chance to escape. Maybe we could be a little more specific and say, from isolation into another world entirely. Many people rely on AR games. Okay, a lot of people are going to say, well, what's AR? To solve that problem, the first thing we do is we write augmented reality. And then in parentheses, we put AR. Now, why do we do that? Because we don't want to write out augmented reality every time we start saying something about AR games. So if we identify this as augmented reality the first time and then put AR in parentheses like this, we tell the reader augmented reality, and guess what? We're going to call it that because other people call it that. All right, so then after this first sentence, you can call it AR without having any issues. Many people rely on augmented reality, parentheses, AR games like Pokemon Go for that reason. So then we see it, okay? Now this, if you remember from the sample, is our thesis statement. If you don't remember from the sample, you can kind of get an idea that it's a thesis because guess what? Here's one thing about why it's great. Here's another thing about why it's great. And then here's a third thing, right? So these signals about why it's awesome are something that should stand out to you as, oh, boom, thesis statement. So we look at this and we see forecast elements. But what don't we see? Well, we don't see our statement of purpose. And in our thesis statement, we want to make sure that we see both the statement of purpose and our forecast elements. So what we want to do is make sure that, one, we don't identify Pokemon Go as it, right? We actually call it, I'm going to move it down here, right? We say Pokemon Go provides, because let's get fancy, players with, and then boom, then we can slot in daily challenges, long-term goals, and a chance to play with friends. And we've now taken this very generic introduction and we've now made it something that is more beneficial for your reader because now they're going to be able to see a lot more context. They're going to be able to understand why it is that you're writing this. Why is it that Pokemon Go slots right in here? And they're going to be able to understand why it's become such an important part of life for many players.